is Chantal Sabbagh. I work at the National Bank of Egypt. I'm in charge of the business development and non-financial services for SMEs. I've been with the bank for the past 4 years, and before that, well, let me start from the beginning. I was an entrepreneur with a lot of passion for private business and risk-taking, and my business failed tremendously in 2010. So I joined back the corporate sector, and I decided to stay focused on why SMEs fail and what can I do from a private sector development person to help this be a shorter and easier life for them. So I joined Endeavor Egypt. I worked with Endeavor on helping entrepreneurs and startups go back to the market and how to expand their businesses. Then I joined the EBRD, working more on advisory and how to make company grow and sustain. And finally, the $1 million question, how to access finance. So I joined National Bank of Egypt to close this loop and try to make it easier for startups, SMEs, on how to understand what the bank wants and how to make it easy for them to be ready and to be bankable and access finance, whether on debt or on equity. In 2008, we have seen how popular the term SMEs became and how everyone started talking about SMEs, and all the country efforts were allocated toward understanding what the definition is and knowing how to help or be part of this new ecosystem called the SMEs. Following that, the startup idea became fashionable and was brought into the market. Maybe many startups were there even before that time, but I mean the ecosystem was not ready to accommodate them or to give them any terminology, any definition, any behavior, any support, etc. So I can say maybe 10 years ago there was an immaturity in the market, there was a lack of support. Today I can see that a lot of advisory support and financial support are brought into our market, whether by IFIs, whether by local financial institutions, accelerators, incubators, VCs, etc. Different players in the financing of startups and SMEs has emerged and has had a lot of success in working with startups. I have to say that the market, especially in Egypt, in Greater Cairo, in Alex, we can see a lot of saturation of support, and maybe we need to start developing Upper Egypt more. Delta, Suez Canal, all this area is still underdeveloped, but the Greater Cairo is a bit spoiled on that front. However, the question remains how to make those people, those companies, those great ideas bankable, and how to make them access finance, whatever the mean or the type of finance is. In the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of support from the Central Bank of Egypt. We've seen a lot of local banks trying to find a way to fit and cope and engage. And I have to say that this was really needed, and it happened in due time, because since the ecosystem started to get built, all the private sector with its investors, with its incubators and accelerators, everyone started developing totally disconnected from the public sector or from the government. So you see that a startup, a young entrepreneur, a couple of friends starting a project with an amazing idea, they get amazing support from all types of competitions, of mentors, and then they started to get encouraged. They get seed funding, they start to raise finance, they have a proof of concept. A lot of investors are very interested in them, but eventually there is a ceiling to all this access to seed money or investment at the beginning, because eventually if a business cannot grow while calculating the cost of finance in its growth, then this business model must change. And so eventually all those startups coming at some point after getting several rounds of investment, and then eventually they need working capital, they have to go to banks, start talking about how to get debt financing, and there is a huge hit. And they realized that all this role playing they had in this private sector, all this glory, they were praised for their efforts, for their idea, and all this, when they go to a bank, it's not taken into any consideration. And for a bank, this is an unbankable project. No one can trust their money, no bank can trust its money with this company, because eventually they don't have a way or a proof or a plan to give it back, to return it back after working with it. And here we have seen a lot of youth experience fail. We've seen a lot of frustration. Whether I was in a bank or not, but being close to this ecosystem, I can say that I've seen a lot of frustration on that front. And so eventually, many people, many investors, many business development people started to dig further to see why banks cannot finance those companies and how can we bridge this gap. And eventually another concept was raised, which is the business model that suits the banks. So the banks realized that they need to be more involved in the startup ecosystem. They need to make more effort, make themselves more understandable. Even if we're not going to lend a company today and we see it unready, then we need to witness the journey, help the founders, work with them on the business model, make them bankable, make them access a lot of other banking services other than the loan itself, until they reach the maturity level or the bankability required by a bank to trust them. So NBE lately has shown a lot of interest in the entrepreneurship ecosystem on different levels. So on an equity side, the bank has the different funds to finance startups, and even started a collaboration with other financial institutions to create fund of funds and be able to have a bigger outreach regarding the knowledge of the startups and how to help them, how to serve them, taking several initiatives like the gender, like technology, like manufacturing, etc. And this cannot be directly done by such a big entity like NBE, so we work very closely in a fund of funds where we expand the investment into these funds who already have access to a big pool of entrepreneurs. On an entrepreneurship level, National Bank of Egypt has several entrepreneurship centers. We can say that by now we have 14 physical presence entrepreneurship centers inside the branches to help walk-in clients coming asking about how to start a project, or referred from the actual branch where the client couldn't fit the criteria of a loan, and so she comes to us when we help them work on their model and work on their credit file. Also on a CSR level, the bank engages in different sponsorship to programs and provide encouragement like prizes or non-financial services, or provide internships for new talents, for entrepreneurs, for startups, etc. And we can help them understand more how a bank works. So definitely the bank is very, very interested in this arena and has different tools of interventions in it. Like I said, the Central Bank of Egypt has shown a lot of interest in the fintech world and how to empower these companies to work and provide their services to banks. So what I can say now that today the banks have realized that they cannot offer all the services by themselves. So eventually it's a better collaboration if we work with fintechs, understanding the market and how help us reach areas or target segments that the bank itself is not able to reach. The Central Bank of Egypt has empowered those fintechs and has made the communication easier with banks to help bridge the gap of knowledge and technology and implementation between the fintechs and the banks. We've seen a lot of discussions, not only on the level of National Bank of Egypt, but on many different levels, like different startups, different fintechs, different maturity level of those companies with different banks in the market. So we've seen now that eventually fintechs approach easier the banks when they have already initiated a discussion with the Central Bank of Egypt. Or we've seen that already the fintechs know how to talk and communicate with bankers. From the bank side, starting to understand different business models for startups and help them on that front know their ways inside the bank. Today we can say that we see a lot of fintechs and startups knowing their way, understanding what the market well, understanding what they want to do, what do they want from the banks specifically. So the integration and the involvement of banks in the entrepreneurship ecosystem made it more accessible for everyone to engage and communicate. Still, I see that there is some difficulties for the fintechs to explain well their business model and know exactly their ways inside a bank. Well, to explain your business to a bank, you talk to IT people, you talk to digital people, you talk to business people, to risk people. So you have a very wide audience inside a financial institution who need to understand exactly what you're doing, what's your value proposition, what's your risk mitigation, how to prove your concept, etc. And so I have to say that by us doing a lot of activities and sponsorships and engagement and entrepreneurship support through our entrepreneurship centers, I can say that today it's much easier for us to reach those companies and for those companies to come and address their challenges and their models, their business models to the bank in order to get a proper feedback, whether to go for it or not, or how to go for it, how to talk to everyone, get the right approval, talk to the right people who can help and enable them. I see now that with the market getting bigger and all the stakeholders getting to know each other more and working closer together, I believe that to set trends, it will be very important for people doing the same thing, not to think of each other as competition, but more to create a benchmark for them and for their new industry or new offering to the market by joining forces together. Yani today, for instance, if we find a startup doing a certain activity or a fintech offering a certain service, the market is too big. So of course, if this fintech can join forces with different companies through networking events, through accelerators, through VCs, etc., the value proposition is much stronger, because one of the big challenges of any startup is to prove its concept and its own way of doing things, or addressing a problem or answering a need. As big as their world is, for banks, this might be a very new line of business. So eventually, when we see in the gatherings or the networking or all the business development activities, we see companies doing the same thing. We encourage them to get introduced to each other, to discuss, and then eventually when they go and talk to the right people, they make their cause stronger. It's not only one company coming to pitch to us an idea of how to do things differently, but it's a group of people, a group of entrepreneurs who already prove their concept, discuss the pros and cons, discuss the risks, and see a new way or a new wave that they would like to introduce to the banking sector of how to do business differently or how to access a new portion of a market. So of course, I see a lot of opportunities coming out of business development activities, because it makes it look like a fact. When I have one company pitching an idea, it's totally different in the weight when I compare it to 5 companies doing the same thing. So eventually we can take more risk with those 5 companies that we would like to take with one. I witnessed the beginning of Minds Alike a couple of years ago before the COVID-19, and I did not know what to expect out of these events, but I have to say that the founders' energy was a big pillar of trusting what is this about. It was a nice event, drinks after work, to go and meet people, talk to people from the same industry, talk to stakeholders, but I've seen it evolving up until today with definitely the energy of the founders. Minds Alike is a great opportunity for mixing the friendship world with the business world. So we always see people we know, people that we see in totally different contexts. You have one discussion filled with a lot of different topics between lifestyle, between business, between opportunities. So definitely it makes it very, very interesting, easy to discuss business with friends and friends of friends. I was introduced to a lot of people that I know, maybe by name or by face, but I got the chance to talk easily with during that event. I also had the chance to recap and follow up in a lot of business discussions with people who were already existing in the event. So definitely I see this as a great opportunity, because networking is a key component of my job, and I see that without networking there is no business development. So of course Minds Alike is an amazing opportunity to prove my point and to make my network bigger. I'd like to know more about the people I'm going to meet. So I think that if the events are going to happen on a regular basis, then it's nice to know who was there, that I missed, maybe in a meeting or talking to, and if those people will be next time, so I'll know how to follow up, how to get the right context for them, maybe continue on a discussion by introducing new people or get introduced to other people. So I mean, arranging this networking, because networking is an art, it's not an ad hoc activity. So Minds Alike makes it easy for us to organize the thoughts, to get the job done, to find the right people to talk to if we take it seriously, because this is a business opportunity rather than a lifestyle. It takes the look of a lifestyle, of a funny, nice, cozy event, but in reality, networking should help us all achieve our business goals much better.